The relevance here, of course, is that the United States government has blamed the Afghani government for harboring Osama bin Laden, who may or may not be responsible for the events that have happened here in the country today, and therefore the Taliban response. The president, who was in Sarasota, Florida, when President Bush, when the first attack on the Trade Center took place, issued a statement then. He left Sarasota. He is not going back to the White House, at least not yet, but he has told reporters, quote, "We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. Make no mistake," said the president, "the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts." The president said the U.S. military has been put on a high alert status and said he had taken security precautions to ensure the government continues to function. And as we said, the president at this moment is not going back to Washington. He has been taken elsewhere for his own safety. There is no reason, by the way, at this point to believe there are continuing threats, but that doesn't mean there aren't any, and the Secret Service is taking no chances, and we can't recall anything even approaching that. We also have a report coming out of London from the Associated Press that followers of Osama bin Laden had warned 3 weeks ago that they would carry out a huge and unprecedented attack on U.S. interests. That, according to a London-based Arab journalist. He adds, they said it would be huge and unprecedented, but did not specify what it was, and we will not assume that this is what it was, but obviously a lot of people are wondering. Joining us on the phone, Richard Holbrooke, former American ambassador to the United Nations, Robert Gates, former head of the CIA, and they join us. Mr. Gates, let me start with you because I suspect that millions of Americans right now are asking, how could something like this happen? How could it happen?
I think we have to start by acknowledging that we've been both fortunate and capable in the past. This is not the first major attack like this that has been planned. Several years ago, there was a plot to bring down 11 American jumbo jets in Asia that the FBI and U.S. intelligence thwarted, and there have been some other major attacks. So I think that when you have a free and open country as we do, we are vulnerable to this sort of thing, and it is the face of this term that people have been talking about for several years of asymmetric warfare, and it is a way of getting at us, the most powerful military nation in the world, in ways in which we're vulnerable.
Sir, we heard, and perhaps it's given our proximity to the events, it's a little bit unseemly, but we heard a member of Congress but a few minutes ago essentially say that the American government failed its people. Is it fair to say that this is a failure, or we just can't know it all?
Well, personally, I believe that for people to start blaming people and organizations at this point is highly premature. I think that we need to find out just exactly how bad this situation is and deal with it. The idea of starting to cast blame within hours of something having happened is in fact unseemly.
And Ambassador Holbrooke, does the United States in a situation like this go it alone, or does it gather the international community together as one, or as much of one as it can, and try and respond in that form?
Well, first of all, let me say that at this moment, we have to find out what happened down there. I used to work in that building and was there when it was attacked a few years ago. I know that area. My assistant has a cousin who's now missing in the building, and my thoughts are first for the enormous, unbelievable loss of life and tragedy that's going on in Lower Manhattan. Beyond that, Aaron, on your question, this requires a unified international response by all the key member states of the world community, including, very importantly, Russia. And as for the interview you just broadcast by the foreign minister from the Taliban, let's be clear on his attempts to disassociate himself from Osama bin Laden. We don't know at this point who did this, but it was well coordinated, and done with a degree of skill which exceeds anything. I think Bob Gates will know better than me, but I think, Bob, this is the most skillful, murderous attack ever in terms of coordination. And I want to be very clear on this. Bin Laden himself, as you just suggested, Bin Laden has said that the Taliban leader, Mullah Muhammad Omar, is the true spiritual leader of the Muslim world. He said that Afghanistan is the purified Islamic State equivalent to Mecca and Medina. And in a tape that the New York Times wrote about 2 days ago, he urged Muslims everywhere, and I'm quoting the New York Times, to migrate to Afghanistan to support the Taliban, saying it's their duty to God, and saying there's now finally a Muslim state that destroys falsehoods and does not succumb to the American infidel and is led by the true believer, Mullah Muhammad Omar, and so on and so forth. So what I want to stress here is that any nation, and this goes for the Taliban and their henchmen in Afghanistan, any nation in the world that harbored anyone associated with this must be treated as though they were part of what is effectively an act of war against the United States. And they cannot hide behind the traditional definitions of difficulty. In the past, we've tried to get Osama bin Laden. He's evaded capture. He almost got killed by a bombing raid 2 or 3 years ago. And I think starting with Afghanistan, we're going to have to hold everyone accountable on the who might have sheltered anyone associated with this act.
So we don't simply, in this conversation, we don't simply hold the group itself, whoever it is, the group itself accountable. We hold anyone accountable, any country, any government accountable if they did nothing to stop it.
Any country which shelters, abates, or helps these people and their cohorts evade capture and the retribution they deserve is, in my view, functionally culpable of the events that took place in New York and Washington and elsewhere today, and must be so warned. I'm not accusing the Taliban specifically at this point because we don't know who did it.
Correct.
But all the evidence points to a connection between Osama bin Laden and Taliban leaders, and an attempt on the Taliban's part to, as the New York Times put it 2 days before this attack, call it as a ploy. And that is a quote from the New York Times before this happened. So I just want to underscore again, we are going to need the support of all our allies in Europe, the Russians, the Chinese, and any other country that might have in the past flirted with playing both sides of the street. Nothing like this has happened in American history. The full dimensions of it are still not clear to anyone, but I think we all can imagine it's going to be heart-wrenching in its dimensions as it becomes fully apparent, and we're not going to be able to leave countries playing two sides here. And I'm sure my friend Bob Gates would not disagree with that.
Let me, Mr. Gates, I want to come back to you. Mr. Holbrook, stay with us for a minute. I believe now we have the president. This is the president on tape a few moments ago. Well, obviously we're having a technical problem. Let me just tell you what, again, the president said in what has been his second statement. His first statement came after the first attacks here in New York. Short time ago, the president said, "We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people." He added, "We make no mistake," said the president, "the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible." I think we're going to try and hear the president again. Here we go. Yeah. This is coming to us from the broadcast pool. It's traveling with the president. Obviously, we're getting It's a very chaotic day. As you can imagine, a horrible tragedy has taken place, and people are working very hard to get stuff done and get it done right. And obviously the pool is having trouble feeding the tape. But again, the president said, make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. Cowardly acts, I think it's fair to say we don't quite have our arms around the magnitude of it all.
I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks. Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. I've been in regular contact with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Team, and my cabinet. We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. Our military at home and around the world is on high alert status, and we have taken the necessary security precautions to continue the functions of your government. We have been in touch with the leaders of Congress and with world leaders to assure them that we will do whatever is necessary to protect America and Americans. I ask the American people to join me in saying a thanks for all the folks who have been fighting hard to rescue our fellow citizens, and to join me in saying a prayer for the victims and their families. The resolve of our great nation is being tested, but make no mistake, we will show the world that we will pass this test. God bless.
President Bush, a short time ago, in his second remarks of the day, the president initially was headed back to the White House, and a decision was made, a security decision was made to divert the flight. And so the president will not go back to Washington, at least not yet. When he will return, perhaps John King can tell us. Our senior White House correspondent joins us now. John? John, are you there?
Yes, I am, Aaron. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. I hear you fine. Do you have any word on when the president will come back?
No, we do not. As you reported, we were told earlier in the day the number one priority was the president's safety. The number two priority was to get him back to the White House because they believe that would send a powerful political statement. But as the president was on his way back from Florida, we are told by sources a security decision was made that at this time not to bring him back to Washington. So he was brought, and we won't disclose his exact location for security reasons, he was brought to one of several military installations in the United States that is equipped, we are told, with a very sophisticated command and control bunker, very much like the equipment that would be available to the president here at the White House in the White House Situation Room. We are also told that national security team members are still in the White House Situation Room, and earlier today, at least as of a little more than an hour ago, Vice President Cheney as well, directing operations and monitoring things from there. But the president obviously deciding not to come directly back to Washington. We are told that is for security reasons, delivering the statement you just heard. He has been in touch with congressional leaders, and we are told leadership members of the U.S. Congress are also being taken to an undisclosed location for their security. So we're trying to get more information on that, and we will bring that to you as soon as we have it. Aaron?
John, thanks. Senior White House correspondent John King. Peter Bergen, CNN's Peter Bergen has been tracking the government of Afghanistan for some time, and he was listening in a few moments ago when the Taliban spokesman was speaking. Peter, first of all, what did you hear? Was there anything that perhaps the rest of us might not have heard, any nuance in what you heard? Why don't you start there?
Well, we just heard from the Foreign Minister, Mutawakil, who's, relatively speaking, a moderate of the Taliban movement. He basically repeated what I think is a standard Taliban line we've heard for the past at least couple of years, which is that Osama bin Laden isn't a terrorist and that he's being contained by the Taliban and that he's not able to conduct political or military missions. This, unfortunately, is really a false statement since Osama bin Laden has been fingered by both Yemeni and U.S. authorities for the bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen in October 2000. There isn't an indictment there yet. The FBI continues to